Hi, my name is Jay Sugarman, and I want to welcome you to Innovation Showcase. The main purpose of this ongoing series is to inform viewers about exciting innovations and creative individuals across the fields of business, science, technology, education, and the arts. Today, via Zoom, we're fortunate to have as our guest world traveling bicyclist extraordinaire Samer Abouhamad. In April 2022, Samer began what intended to be a bike ride from nearby Brookline to Argentina, but it turned into a 3-year journey covering 46,000 miles, 6 continents, and 62 countries. From salt flats and deserts to breakdowns and isolation, Sam experienced it all and kept going. During the program, Sam will inform us about his incredible journey and in the process will come to better understand and appreciate how curiosity, resilience, and innovation can turn a simple idea into a life-changing adventure. Let's start by meeting Samer and find out how, whether on a bicycle or in everyday life, meaningful change often starts with a single courageous step. Welcome, Samer. So delighted you're able to be here.
Thank you for having me, Jay, and thanks for the awesome intro. I appreciate it.
Well,
And
first,
you captured so much in the beginning right away. So, I agree. The first step is the most important. So,
no, it's great advice for all of us. And I just have to say, before we hear about the many steps you took, congratulations on the incredible accomplishment. I mean, for me, reading about it and now looking back through your incredible documentation on website and Instagram, so inspiring to follow your journey and retrace your steps. As I mentioned in the intro, your journey didn't begin biking around the world. What if inner question or restlessness were you really responding to when you first got on your bike?
yeah, it's a few different things. I would say really it all started in during COVID when I was working a more traditional corporate job. I was living in New York City and working in real estate finance. And when I was still going into the office and in the flow of everyday life in New York, I was, I thought I was happy. I think I was happy. But once that flow got kind of broken up during COVID, uh, there was just a lot of time to reflect on what I really wanted out of life and, how I saw myself. And so, yeah, I just thought, I want to do something hard and test myself in a way I've never tested myself before and go out and see the world. I've always loved to travel and I've always loved sports. And I think, bike travel is just like the perfect intersection of those two things, combining a physical activity, but also going out and seeing and experiencing new places and cultures every day. Every day is a new road. And so once I started, I just fell in love with that type of travel. And like you said, my plan was just to make it to Patagonia, which is, in my head was a 1 year trip. So it still was a big trip.
For
But yeah,
sure.
that turned into something much bigger, and I ended up crossing other continents and, it completely changed my life, as you said, for the better. So yeah. So yeah, this picture's in Mexico near Oaxaca.
Nice, nice. Can you give us a sense of the different routes you took? Wonderful visual here.
Yeah, so to give some context, I started in my hometown of Brookline, which you'll see on the map. I crossed the US going through a couple landmarks, like the Gateway Arch in St. Louis. I biked through Kansas. I biked over a few of the mountain passes in Colorado to cross the Continental Divide. I crossed the Mojave Desert and I was on Route 66 and made my way to Santa Monica. And then from there, I kept going south. So I crossed into Baja California, then took a boat from Baja to mainland Mexico, Mexico, Guatemala, El Salvador, Honduras, Nicaragua, Costa Rica, Panama. And then from Panama to Colombia, I took another boat. And then, yeah, Colombia all the way to Patagonia, I followed the Andes loosely. So I was in the mountains there, Colombia, Ecuador, Peru, Bolivia, Argentina, Chile, then back to Argentina. So that first trip you see on the left there took 1 year in one day. So I was almost exactly 1 year, which would have been cool. And
Yeah.
then the second trip, the chapter two, I like to call it chapters. So chapter one was what we just talked about. Chapter two is the northern point of Europe in Norway called the North Cape. Uh, and I biked basically all the way to Spain, where the Atlantic Ocean meets the Mediterranean Ocean in Tarifa. And
Uh-huh.
then from there, I took a boat to Morocco. And then Morocco, I followed I went through some mountains and then it popped up along the coast in the Sahara Desert and followed the coastal road through the Sahara and found my way through West Africa. So Senegal, Guinea, Gambia, Ivory Coast, Ghana, Togo, Benin,
Wow.
Nigeria, Cameroon, Republic of Congo, Democratic Republic of Congo, Namibia, or no, Angola, Namibia, South Africa. So that took about 8 months. So I was a little faster on that one. And that was around 14,000 miles. Chapter one was around 16,000 miles. And then
Mm.
most recently, I finished that second trip. I said, hey, I'm just missing Australia and Asia now. And you could say Antarctica, but that's not on my mind. It wasn't on my mind. But
Right.
yeah, Australia, I started in Melbourne, went to Adelaide, and then I crossed the outback from south to north. I tried looking for a boat, but I couldn't find a boat. So I ended up flying from Darwin to Bali. And then Bali, I biked an island hop through Indonesia. Then I took a 17-hour passenger trip from Sumatra Island in Indonesia to Singapore. And then I was on mainland Asia. So Singapore, Malaysia, Thailand, Cambodia, Laos, Vietnam, China, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, Afghanistan. And then when I was Afghanistan, the original plan was to bike through Iran, Iraq, and get to the Middle East that way. But due to heightened tensions in June, I ended up going through Pakistan. And then Pakistan, I had to take a flight to Oman. And then Oman, UAE, Saudi Arabia, Jordan, Syria, Lebanon. And I ended in
Wow.
Lebanon because it's my parents' home country. And it's
Mm.
actually where I fell in love with biking. So it was kind of a full circle moment for me to end my trip there. So I know that's a lot, but that's basically
No,
three
most
years. That took nine
definitely.
months the last trip.
And I just want to call attention to viewers and others how incredible, again, the documentation through commentary, through photos and videos on the website and your Instagram
Mhm.
highlight and enrich many-fold over what you just provided as an outline. Before we hear about some of the specifics, I just have to ask about packing. I know personally, I have trouble if I'm going away for a long weekend, what to decide to take. How do you pack, or how did you go about these different routes or different chapters equipping yourself?
Sure. So I mean, before I left, I spent so much time like salaciously reading blogs of other travelers and comparing different lightweight equipments and what could be best. So I thought I had a good idea, but I still packed too much. And so the picture you're showing here was when I left my front door in Brookline.
Mm.
But when I got to the West Coast, I ended up sending a bunch of stuff back too that I didn't need. But basically, when I was packing, you got to just think of the basics. So I knew I would be camping, so that means tent, sleeping bag, and some sort of air mattress, which you kind of see in the top left of the picture there. And then it's clothing. So I had, three pairs of boxers, three socks, one pair of shorts I would ride in, and then one pair of shorts that I would chill in at night. A down jacket, a rain jacket, some toiletries. I had a pair of shoes I would ride in, and then the Crocs you see are what I would wear off the bike. And then, yeah, some basic tools. And that's about it. Like I see the lock that I had there. The lock I ended up sending home too. I was like, this is extra weight. I'm never using it. The Rubik's Cube I ended up sending home. That was more like a cool novelty, but I wasn't really using that anymore. And then there's some electronics you see up there. So a headlamp, a Garmin bike computer, which I could use for routing and keeping stats. So that's another element of documentation. I have like a GPS route of every single mile I bike, basically.
Mm.
Uh, And then I have a satellite GPS too up on the top bar, that orange thing. And that's what drew the map showed on the previous slide. All those blue
Hmm.
dots is literally the satellite GPS pinging every 10 minutes. And that was more of a safety backup plan. There's a SOS button on that, and my parents could track me even when I was at a reception.
Ah,
So that was a cool little tool. And then one thing I guess I didn't touch on is I had a little multi-fuel stove there you could see in the bottom
oh
left.
yeah. Uh-huh.
And so that allowed me to cook. And then I had a pot and a pan. I ended up sending the pots and pans home. I just kept one little pot of because I didn't realize I wasn't cooking that much. And yeah, I did. So, you kind of figure out what works as you go. And I think one advantage to the first leg of my trip being in the US is I got to California, and it was sort of like a trial run for me before entering Mexico and other less familiar ground. And so when I got to California, like I said, I was able to send a bunch of stuff back that I wasn't utilizing, and was able to fine tune my setup that way. And as I went along, in South America, I made some other changes, and by the time I finished, I was pretty optimized. And so there's different considerations. You could bring your kitchen sink in the whole house, which is fine. Maybe you'd be more comfortable on some aspects of the trip, but then you got to think about it. You're carrying all that with your bike. So the more you carry, the slower you're going to be too. So it's kind of finding that perfect balance for you. There's no right or wrong way. It's just like what works well for you. Because like I said, I met travelers who have their dog in a trailer on the back, and they're making jewelry, and they're bringing steel and wire wrapping, and they're selling jewelry along the way. So for them, it's way more of a like their life than like a challenge. So, there's no right or wrong way, and you kind of figure out what works well for you as you go because it's like such a unique thing to do.
It was most definitely. There's a wonderful overview of clothing and goods, but how do you prepare yourself? How did you mentally for going across continents alone on just your bicycle? What was the mental preparation like, and how did that sort of evolve over the course of your travels?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I didn't like do much mental preparation. I was maybe a little naive in that sense. I just started. And like you said in your intro, I mean, the first step really is the hardest one because you spend time doing all this preparation and researching, and then you're telling friends, and people start to think you're crazy, and then you quit your job and you have to save money. All that stuff is really the hard stuff. But once you leave, like I just felt so free. Um, and so mental preparation, I didn't really do. But one thing along the way you learn is physically your body adapts as you go, and mentally too. And so, one piece of advice that I would give, and something I learned pretty quick on the trip that would help, my mental is just break it down into small trips. Because when
Mm.
you're sitting in the cornfields of Kansas and you're looking at a map and you're like, I need to get to Patagonia, that could be really
Wow.
overwhelming, right? But when I was sitting in the cornfields of Kansas, I was like, all right, let's just focus on getting to Colorado and getting to Denver. From Denver, focus on getting to Arizona, right? Or to Utah, Utah to Arizona. And you just break it down into small steps like that. And before you know it, you're making progress and you're feeling movement and you have momentum. And you could break it down even further. Like if you're having a bad day, it's just like, hey, let's get to tomorrow. And then you could break it down even further, like, hey, let's just make it an hour to this gas station. Next hour we'll make it here. So just breaking down a big goal into small checkpoints, I think, is a really effective way, and something to help drive me forward. And I think that applies to anyone listening in their goals in life, right? Just break things
Definitely.
down, chip away at it, and before you know it, like you've made more progress than you think once you step back. So
Great advice indeed. And I have to say, another thing that stands out watching a number of your video clips is just the enjoyment you brought each day, or most days, I'm sure, not every day, with the experience that you were really taking in the moment or the individuals that you, in a way, had the incredible opportunity to be experiencing day after day. That really comes across as grueling as this was. The enjoyment and the appreciation you took from this incredible once in a lifetime opportunity, I think.
Yeah. I mean, I tried. I think it's twofold. I think I probably showed the enjoyment more on my social media than the hard moments, but it's true. And, like I would just be outside. I'm not on my phone. I'm one with nature.
Yeah.
And it's just a really freeing feeling. So, it's hard to really complain when I would even when I had hard moments, I would just think like, would you really rather be anywhere else than out here? Like, would you rather be back at your desk working your old job? So I would try to remind myself that when the hard moments did come. And
Mhm.
ultimately, the hardest moments end up being the ones you remember the most too. So in the moment, it can be hard to remind yourself that. But once you overcame a tough situation, and I'm sitting here back in Boston looking back on the last 3 years, those tough situations you had to overcome are the ones that stick out the most ultimately too. So enjoyment, I guess, comes in many forms. Like I think suffering is a form of enjoyment in a way too. So maybe that's what I was doing too, just internally suffering, but it brought me joy in a weird way.
Exactly, exactly. Well, we're fortunate to have a few samples, courtesy of your Instagram videos,
Oh
of
boy.
scenery, of individuals. So we really want to take advantage, given our time, of these moments. And the first one we have here, I believe you're in Peru. Just a quick word or tell us where you are and what we're going to enjoy.
Yeah, so this is in Peru. There's like a pretty famous mountain biking route called the Peru Great Divide or the Peru Divide. But basically, it's, yeah, a chunk of off-road section that goes from north to south in a big part of the country. And this was one of the highest points. This is over 5,000 meters, or just at 5,000 meters, which I think is around 16,000, over 16,000 feet.
Mm,
And yeah, I was biking with a Dutch cyclist I met along the way. So that's who's taking this video, if you're wondering, like how I have a video of
yeah,
myself.
yeah.
But yeah, as we got to the top there, the road was snowed in. So, at that point, we had been walking already over an hour. We weren't going to turn back. So we just kept going over the pass. So this is, yeah, the top of that pass.
Okay, let's enjoy it.
Nice. Yeah, so. Yeah, really. I mean that speaks to it too. It's like the hardest moments lead to the most beautiful places. I'm climbing that
Gorgeous.
mountain, and then yeah, we arrived at the other side of the pass and found this little hut to sleep in, like an old herders or alpaca farmers hut they left there, I guess. So,
Oh,
that was a nice surprise after a long and cold day climbing the mountain too.
stunning, stunning.
Yeah, and
Speaking,
Peru, I'll just say Peru really was one of the highlights. People ask all the time, like,
ah,
what's the best country? And it's hard to really narrow it down. But if you're looking for epic mountains and remoteness and beautiful scenery, the Peruvian Andes are really epic. You'll round a corner and you'll just have like you'll be surrounded by 20,000-foot mountain peaks you don't know the name of. And you'll bike a bit, and you'll crown another corner, and you'll see 1,000 alpacas and
mm,
surrounded by new mountains you've never heard of. So it really
wow.
helps make you feel super small, but it shows you how beautiful nature is too. Yeah.
Hmm. Speaking of surprises, we're going to move on to the next clip we have, situated in the French Alps and
Ooh.
coming in contact with these incredible number of sheep. Just a very quick word before we roll the clip.
Yeah, this is climbing a famous mountain pass in the Alps called Le Col du Galibier. So Galibier Pass is what it's called. So it's like a pretty famous cycling climb. They'll do it in the Tour de France every few years.
Hmm.
And so, yeah, I mean, I'll keep saying it, like the hardest roads usually lead to the most beautiful places.
Yeah,
Like,
as
like
we'll.
in this case, I could have taken roads away from the mountain, the faster road, but I knew about this mountain pass and, you know, I just went for it. And here you are, yeah, surrounded by sheeps and nature and beauty. So,
Wow, wow. Let's take it in for a few seconds here.
I'm almost at the top of these views.
Oh, wow.
Nice.
Mm, I
Yeah,
can't
man,
stop, baby. I
it's
can't
really
stop me.
beautiful
Let's
up
go.
there.
It's even breathtaking doesn't give true meaning to the scenery there.
Yeah, the Alps, and I would say the Alps, the French Alps was probably a highlight from my time in Europe.
Mm, mm.
Because Europe, I had traveled through a fair amount. I had studied abroad there, and logistically, it's all not too difficult, I'd say, compared to other places I've been.
Stop, dude.
So the highlight was kind of going off into these mountains, and there's a few other mountain passes I did too. But yeah, the Alps was a highlight for me in Europe for sure.
I think I know another highlight from reading some of your commentary, and I think you refer to it as the secret sauce of the trip, is your encounter with a wide range of individuals. And one of the clips that I think speak to this very nicely is the one we're about to see when I think you're in the outback
Yeah,
here.
correct. I'm in the
Can you
Outback
set
there.
this one up and then we'll enjoy the interaction?
Yeah, so I was in the Outback. The main road is pavement, but before joining the main road, I did like a 600-kilometer side quest called the Udnadada Track. And
Wow.
on that track, there was one like village halfway, basically, and one little settlement before too. But basically, there's not a lot of resupply. It's big distances between the resupplies, and then the road is dirt, and you're going pretty slow. So like it's big distances, and you're not covering it slowly. So
Mm.
I had to carry, I think the most I've ever carried, 13 liters of water with me at once.
Wow.
And so I probably would have been okay, but cars would stop all the time and like check on me, you know? And
Mm.
in this case too, I had passed the settlement. And so the lady at the settlement was telling cars like, hey, look out for a cyclist.
Ah,
And if you see him, like hook him up, give him some water. And so these guys had been alerted 100 kilometers back that there was a crazy
ah,
cyclist on the road. And so when they passed me, they stopped and gave me water. Yeah. And they had a full tour bus with people and they still took the time to stop, you know? So it's
wow.
cool.
Well, let's appreciate this interaction.
Thank you.
Here we go.
How are you? You gotta work some trick, right? I know, right? I know. I haven't seen anyone in a while, so I forgot that people are out here. Hey, you doing for water? Maybe I can soak up everything you got. I'll got some water for you. If you have, I won't say no. Thank you, man. Thanks so much.
Yeah, so like obviously the water is nice to get too, but it's also like so nice to have human interaction and just to feel seen, you know, when you're out there all day alone, the moral
Yeah.
boost of just having a conversation and someone letting you know that like they see you goes a long way too, and that helps propel you forward till the next interaction.
Yeah, I'm gonna get
So
Yes.
obviously the water is great, but also just having a nice conversation
the Middle East where my parents are from.
is
Yeah, I
goes a
was
long
figuring.
way. And yeah, it shows you too, like even in the most remote places, you'll find human kindness, like
Thanks
in the
so
middle of
much.
the
This is
outback.
like gonna be with that. What's that?
That's
And then they gave me
fabulous.
some
Thank you guys
bars
so
and some
much.
electrolyte
Thank you,
tablets.
and Darbo, thank you for waiting for me too. Can I take a selfie real quick with you guys?
That's great. Speaking of remote places, and I think this next one, the final one we're going to have time, I believe, to show, speaks to the language of cycling when maybe the natural languages aren't that common. And this little clip is going to be in China when you came in contact with another individual.
Yes.
So let's
So yeah, I mean, I said alluded to it earlier, but I've met at this point hundreds of other traveling cyclists, and we come in all shapes and sizes and ages and backgrounds, but we all are connected by the fact that we're on two wheels and moving forward. So, I mean, it's sort of like a code that wherever you are in the world, if you see another cyclist, um, you stop and you say what's up and you just make sure everything's okay. So I think the video you're going to show is in China. and it's an older gentleman who has a bike and he's pulling way more weight than me. But yeah, we're able to kind of have a conversation with charades and our
Yeah.
enemies. And yeah, we could both give each other a little boost, I think, then.
Again, a great example of, as you say, the secret sauce of human friendship and interaction throughout the trip.
Yeah, and I think, in the world of AI and technology and like us having a Zoom, but I think it's important to remember like nothing will ever replace human connection. And we're social creatures by nature. And so that connection is something you can't really replace any else. And yeah, look at his bike. He probably has triple the weight as me. We're going up some hills.
Yeah, crazy.
So it's like that also gives me a boost too. I'm like, this legend is double my age and pushing triple the weight. Like I have no excuse to stop. So yeah, a lot of inspiration.
Okay, photo.
Yeah. And I always love to take selfies or photos. I know everyone's documentation style is different, but I'm definitely a visual guy. So I take
Oh,
photos and then I go back and look at the photos and like everything comes back pretty
no, we
cool.
appreciate definitely that you did it. And I love the thumbs up.
Yeah, I mean, that's
Yeah.
universal. Thumbs up, waving. And then you learn other charade tricks if you're looking somewhere to camp, like tent, sleep, you want chicken, right? I mean, like there's ways you learn how to kind of communicate without communicating when you're out there for a long time.
You know, unfortunately, in closing, what lessons from this journey apply beyond cycling?
I mean, there's a lot. I mean, we touched on some of them, so maybe
Right.
I could quickly run through like my main lessons, I would say. The first is the power of just starting. So like taking that first step is the hardest part. And I could say that with certainty looking back on my travels. The hardest part is starting. I know one of the themes of this podcast is resilience too. So I would say it's not a matter of if things will go wrong when you're doing a big challenge. It's when things will go wrong. And so even knowing that before you start is important. And then when
Mhm.
those obstacles come your way, find ways to overcome them and keep that positive momentum going. So resilience is key. Just starting is key. I would say we also talked about it, but setting a big goal, but breaking it down into checkpoints will take you very far, I think. And I always like to say it's like building a house. You go brick by brick by brick. And when you're at the wall, it's hard to see the progress, but you keep building those bricks. And after a while, you step back and you'll see the progress you made and how far you've come. And I think it's the same thing with my trip. I would just go checkpoint by checkpoint, but then you go back and you look at the map you showed and it's like, wow, like I did all that. And so I'm proud of myself for that. And then lastly, what we just talked about, but the human connection is something that we should lean into and not be afraid of. And I think traveling is a good way to gain that perspective and interact with people with different backgrounds and different parts of the world. And I think ultimately, like, we shouldn't be scared to travel. Don't be scared of the world. We're all more similar than we think, whether we're here in the US or Afghanistan or China or Peru or South Africa. You know what I mean? So I think go out there and see the world for yourself. Don't be scared. And yeah, take that first step.
Fabulous advice and amazing things that you've learned from this 3 year plus expedition. In closing, in credits, we'll have your website, Instagram, so people can keep in touch, possibly find out more about upcoming adventures
Yeah, yeah, sure.
once you've regrouped after re-entering. The Massachusetts area from the incredible travels. But in closing, Sam, I just have to say continued success with future endeavors. And thank you so much for taking the time to share, give us a little glimpse of the incredible accomplishment you've had.
Thank you, Jay. I appreciate it. Yeah, I'd love to connect with anyone who's listening. So you could follow me on social media, samer.bikes. And if you're looking to get into bike packing, I'm planning a trip in France in May. So I could send you more information on that. But everyone who's listening, get out there. The bike could change your life.
Fabulous. Great words to end with.
Thank you,
Also want to
Joe.
thank those of you watching for joining us and hope you'll be able to tune in next time.